Good morning everyone, here we are on the 9th of February, and having just done a quick count up, this is actually day 40, so we've done 40 days and 40 nights. And I hope that, if you're doing this yourself, I hope that you've kind of got into a routine with it, and that this has become, a part of your daily life. So what I'm going to do today is I've chosen a cotton pearl 8 in a kind of reddish brown, and I've just brought it up in this bottom corner here. Let me talk about what I did before, actually, in case anybody's wondering about how to do this. This is just whipped running stitch, so it's just lines of running stitch with another thread whipped over the running stitches. Really, really easy. This is just lines of straight stitch. What I'm going to do today, I think, is I'm going to do a little row of boxes, and I thought I might talk today about what daily stitching is to me, and then you can think about what it is to you. So you can see that little box is just 4 straight stitches in a little cube. Primarily, I think of this stitched cloth as a way of marking the passage of time. The cloth itself becomes a witness to time passing, because each of these little blocks represents a certain amount of time, however much time it took to create it. And the stitches kind of hold that time, because if we think about what time is and where it comes from, we only have a finite amount of time in our life, and this is some of it, a visual depiction of time passing. So that's one thing it is. Another thing it is a kind of calendar, because obviously we do this every day, and each day comes with its own agenda sometimes. So, for example, this block here, and I know what that is, that's the 19th of January, and I know what it is because it has 45 stitches and it commemorates an anniversary. Very, very personal to me. I'm not going to say what it is, I'm not going to talk about it, but the 19th of January on every stitch journal that I've done, every daily stitching, has these marks on it. So it's kind of a calendar. And also this day here, which a lot of people have said, what a pretty flower. It's I can see how you think it might look like a flower. It isn't meant to be a flower, and I will talk about it at some point. Not today, but also just to point out that this sort of quite abstract squiggle is, I think, markedly different from some of the previous squares, and that's because I wanted to mark that day. It's the 4th of February. I wanted to mark that day as to set it out as different somehow, to set it apart, because I will want to come back and refer to it in the future, and I will talk about it, but not just yet. So, as well as being a calendar, it's also a kind of, I appear to be doing another row of these, that's okay. As well as being a calendar, it's a kind of diary as well, or a journal, where you can kind of respond to anything that's happening in your life. And you can kind of let your needle and thread find a way to express or reflect on those events. And it is just a creative doodle. And creative doodles often, if you kind of sit with them a bit, you can often find a kind of meaning in them. I'll just turn this round because it's easy to get at. So you can often find a kind of meaning in what you're doing. So it's a way of marking events and a way of responding to events. And in that sense, it's a kind of art therapy. You know, it helps you to understand and process something that might be happening in your life. And it's also a permanent visual reminder of it, because, you know, all of these things are here permanently, really. So in that sense, it's a bit like a journal. It's a daily creative practice, which is, well, that's good for anybody, isn't it? It's good for all kinds of things. It's good for hand-eye coordination. It's good for choosing colours and textures. It's about learning what you like, what pleases you. And as you do that, you will find that you'll develop a voice and a distinctive personal style. And that only comes from regular practice. So doing this every day will give you that. And also a little mindful stitching is good for creating a bit of mental space, little peace and quiet, where we can let the mind rest and be still while your hands are busy. And that's good for our mental health as well. I've just started a new thread here because I ran out. I'm just it just occurs to me, you know, while I'm talking about what daily stitching is, I'm doing little boxes, and I'm kind of compartmentalizing what we're doing, aren't I? And that's how it happens, you know. It just so happens that way. So often, your stitching will tell you how you feel, even when you don't know yourself, or you haven't made the conscious connection. But if we're talking about daily creative practice, you could say, well, you could just do daily creative practice in a sketchbook, or with a pen, or with paints, or some other creative thing, and you could. But I think doing it with needle and thread, as textile art, as stitch, is the thread literally connects us to millions of women who've gone before and stitched by hand, out of choice or necessity. It always amazes me that, you know, when you see pictures of historical costumes, Elizabethan dresses, and anything from the 18th century, for example, it's all been stitched by hand. Every single bit of it has been stitched by hand. They didn't have machines. And I think there's something very connecting and grounding in hand stitching, in textile art. And I think it helps to keep us grounded and connected as well. You know, connects us to everything in our life, really. And I think it also functions as something between art and craft, because traditionally or historically, art is usually about imagination and expression and creativity for its own sake. You know, art doesn't have a purpose. Art is just itself. And something like stitching or embroidery kind of sits with craft to some extent, in that it's about technique and skill and workmanship and function. But I think this falls kind of between the two things. It's kind of a fusion of art and craft. I see this, personally, I see it more as art. People often ask me, well, it's very nice, but what are you going to do with it? And, you know, I don't need to do anything with it, because it already is a thing. It's already functioning perfectly well as a stitched cloth. It doesn't need to be any other useful thing. That's already what it is. But it is versatile enough that you could turn it into something useful if you so wanted. I'm back to boxes, aren't I? And I've said before that, you know, most art is a kind of self-portrait. And this too, because it becomes so personal, you know, it becomes about your response to things in your life. And that's another reason I don't do a video every day, because I don't want people to sort of blindly copy what I'm doing, because a lot of this is deeply personal to me and isn't going to be personal to you. You know, at some point you will feel brave enough or have enough confidence to kind of do without the safety net and just dive in and do your own thing that means something to you. All I'm doing here really is kind of demonstrating how to stitch intuitively when you don't know what to do, or you don't know what you're going to do. Your hands do know what you're going to do, your brain just doesn't know it yet. So, talking about this as a kind of self-portrait, which I think is what it is, if you, at the risk of sounding slightly gross here, but if you lick your thread, you know, the end of the thread before you thread it into your needle, what you're doing there is actually dragging your own DNA through the cloth, and the cloth will pick up oil and sweat from your hands, because, you know, we're human animals, that's just what happens. Even if you can't see it happening, that's how it happens. But actually what happens is the cloth actually literally absorbs your own DNA. So as well as being a self-portrait, it becomes a kind of cloth twin, a bit like a clone. You know, it becomes you. It's a kind of alter ego, another self. And I think that is what makes it so profoundly personal. And I think finally we should say we do it because it's fun. You know, it's fun. It's very, very satisfying. It's a little bit every day, adds up to something that's much more than anything you could possibly have imagined at the beginning. It would be very, very hard to design something like this at the outset. You know, if you weren't doing a bit every day, if you wanted to make the whole thing at once, it would be very, very hard to design it. This way it just happens, you know, a little bit every day. It's fun, it's creative, it's therapeutic, it's very meaningful, and letting a bit happen at a time, I think keeps us, well, this is true for me, it keeps me curious and excited about where it'll go. So the more I do, the more I want to do, you know. This is never a chore. Every day I'm excited about, oh, what will I do today? How will it look? And that, you know, it's a joyous thing. It's that, you know, we need to find the joy where we can, I think. And if you're finding joy in a bit of gentle hand stitching, then I think that's a fine thing. So there we are. Those are some of the reasons I do this. And I'd be really interested to hear your reflection on that as well. You know, if this is a new practice for you, how are you finding it? Has it become something more than it was when you set out? Because I bet it has. It may not have done. It's not wrong if it hasn't, by the way. You know, it is whatever it needs to be in your life. But I'd be really interested to know, you know, what this means to you as your own practice. Have you begun to explore your own designs yet? Have you allowed your needle to take the thread where it wants to? Sometimes it's a matter of just sitting back and watching, and it will do it. This has happened all on its own, without my explaining it, without my intending to do it. It's just happened all on its own, just while I've been thinking about something else, or kind of thinking about the practice on a larger scale, rather than thinking about the, you know, the details. I've been thinking about the whole picture. So I'm just finishing off this thread here. And oops, there we are. So we've got 2 more blocks to go before we've got this kind of area filled, and then obviously we're going to carry on into February down here. So I will be back somewhere around here, probably, and in the meantime, enjoy your stitching.